So welcome everyone. On behalf of the New Jersey Society of Optometric Physicians, we would like to thank everyone for joining us. Tonight's webinar entitled COVID-19 and Your Lease Options is presented by Mr. Charles Feitel and Mr. Thomas Linehan and is sponsored by Health Pro Realty Group. My name is Sharon Keiss, NJSOP Associate Executive Director, and I would like to pass along some relevant information before the start of our program. Please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of the Zoom page to submit questions at any time during the webinar. Questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. For reference, note that this webinar is being recorded so that we can make this information accessible following the conclusion of our program. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Charles Feitel graduated from the University of Michigan in 1982 and the University of Toledo College of Law in 1985. Although a lawyer by education, he has been in the commercial real estate business since the mid-80s. Since 1996, his firm has specialized in the representation of medical, dental, and optometry and other healthcare professionals with their commercial real estate needs. In addition, he has professionally represented several different healthcare institutions. Moreover, his firm has leased millions of square feet of medical office space for a who's who's list of medical office building owners. Mr. Feitel is recognized as an industry leader in healthcare real estate and has been a featured speaker at many national healthcare summits. Having worked with hundreds of healthcare providers over the years, Mr. Feitel has learned the ins and outs of medical real estate. Since 1996, he has represented medical real estate transactions in excess of $1 billion. Mr. Thomas Linehan joined Health Pro Realty Group after his experience as an investment sales agent with Marcus & Millichap in northern New Jersey. He also had extensive experience working with private real estate investors in the Northeast region for the past 7 years. His focus is working on both tenant representation and landlord assignments in all healthcare disciplines, including medical, dental, and optometry. He graduated with a risk management degree with a focus in real estate from Penn State University and is leading the company in New Jersey and New York. Finally, we'd like to thank Health Pro Realty Group for their sponsorship and for making tonight's webinar possible. Without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Charles Feitel and Tom Linehan.
Thank you, Sharon. We want to make the bulk of our presentation tonight over your opportunities in light of the COVID situation, but I just want to quickly say that additionally, we can help you with any commercial real estate need that you may have. So commercial as in building, not residential. And specifically helping you with a new lease, renewing your lease, finding space to lease or buy, or if you buy an optometric practice, helping you renew that lease. So we're going to focus more tonight on what we can do with respect to COVID and renewing your lease and creating value and saving money. But those are the other services that we provide for all of our healthcare clients as well. So why don't we see if we can get our PowerPoint presentation fired up, Tom, and we'll start trying to help these people.
Let's see. So there we go. Let's play that. You can see that?
It's all good on my end. Yes, sir.
Perfect. So
I think you've got control of it, right?
Yes. There we go.
All right. So essentially, when you have a lease, most of you probably have a lease. It could be 10 pages, it could be 110 pages, but the basic components, the nuts and bolts of your lease are the rent, the free rent, the improvements, which is the money that the landlord gives, and what the annual escalation might be. Obviously, in addition, could be 100 other clauses, but these are the main kind of guts of the deal. And these are the things that we as commercial real estate brokers understand what the market is and what the best terms we can get for you. Tom is in New Jersey. He's in Montville. He covers the entire state of New Jersey as well as New York. And our market knowledge is how this works. A lot of times people will say they can negotiate these terms, but you only, the best way to describe it is it's a very secretive business. Landlords on purpose don't like to share information. So we know from doing other deals in the marketplace what the rent should be, how much free rent you should be entitled to, how much improvement money you should be entitled to, and what the annual escalation should be. So there's no reason to try to go on this alone or go with someone you have to pay to do this, because we're going to accomplish all that for you at no cost. And I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we do, one of our bread and butter tickets is renegotiating your lease. And now could be a great time for that, because obviously the pandemic has caused a recession in commercial real estate. Now let me define that a little bit. The medical space market is actually really not in a recession. The industrial warehouse space market is not either. But traditional office, obviously, you see on the news, most people are not going into the office. So companies are terminating their leases, cutting back on their term, getting less space. That's creating a problem for landlords. So when the amount of vacancy goes up, it's a supply and demand business. Vacancy goes up, prices go down. Retail has been incredibly hard hit, not so much for optometry professionals, but with restaurants and karate schools and beauty salons. You've probably seen in your neighborhood people struggling and or going out of business. That creates vacancies, and that in turn creates the landlords in a position where in order to make deals, they have to reduce their rates.
Yeah, and I think Chuck kind of hit it on the head there exactly. And normally, what we'll do is help obviously with the renegotiation of your current lease. And normally when we would recommend having that conversation is probably around, the 12, 15, 2-year mark. And basically what we've been able to see now as what he had mentioned with everything going on in the real estate market and, kind of the recession that we're facing in other specialties, it kind of creates a unique opportunity where, we could really take advantage of what's going on. And for example, we were working with another client of ours who had about, I think it was, 3 years left on their lease. And, it was a long-term lease. And, through the annual escalations, they were paying, I think probably in the mid 40s per square foot on their rental rate. And it had gotten, quite expensive. And normally, if you go to the landlord and say, hey, we want to, renegotiate this lease, there's 3 years left, but, can we get back to a market rate and save our doctors some money? Normally in that position, they're not going to do anything because they don't have to. But with everything going on, and as Chuck had said, with some of these mom and pop restaurants that are, the restaurants, cleaners, things like that are in a lot of these retail centers where you may see, your typical optometrist office. That opens the door for us to have a conversation where we say, well, we will lock in a very strong, tenant that's going to be in your center for a long time. There may be 3 years left. But, let's add on, say, another 5-7 years as, the doctor is going to want to stay there. But let's cut that rate down. Let's get them some money for paint and carpet. And with that client that I was talking about, we signed him on for an extra 7 years, and he was going to stay there anyway. And retroactively, we were able to save him, I think, about, brought his rate down to mid 30s, saved them instantly about $65,000 it was. So, I mean, that's just one example where, no matter where you may be on your lease, there's always a good time to have that conversation because with everything going on, the worst thing that you could do is ask and they say no. But now more than ever, they are saying yes and kind of entertaining ways that allow us to save you money that you really never could before. So
the landlords are very good at what they do. So normally when you're talking to a landlord about renegotiating your lease early and you're paying over the market, it's a very short conversation. They don't want to talk to you. You've signed a contract. There's nothing you can do. But what Tom was alluding to, it's all timing. If you have a couple years, for example, left on your lease and you're paying over the market, which we can figure out for you, and chances are you are, the landlord doesn't want you to leave. He or she does not want a vacancy in their shopping center. And the shopping center across the street, even though you have 2 years left on their lease, they're going to be willing to structure a deal with you that allows you to move and get enough free rent that you won't have to incur double rent. And then, in fact, they're going to get you as a tenant. So Normally that probably doesn't work, but what COVID has done is created a softness in the market that's very much worth exploring. And if you were considering a second office, now clearly is a time. If you were considering possibly purchasing a building or a land and building a building, depending on the amount of time left on your lease, the attraction now is that interest rates are historically low to borrow money for the building. So the slide says don't get squashed by a professional. They're really good at what they do. In their world, they're going to reach out to you 3 to 6 months before your lease expires and offer you a deal because they know at that point you can't move. Mm-hmm. And the secret to our sauce is Tom's going to contact that landlord 2 years ahead of your lease expiration and see if there's a way that we can create some value for you. And oftentimes, not only do we do it, but we can do it retroactively. It is a contract, but it can be renegotiated. So we can effectively terminate the contract and do a new one. And your rental reduction that you're seeing and that possible free rent and or money for tenant improvements from the landlord, you're getting right now when you need it. So it's a historical time to look at these options. And I mentioned earlier, the fee, landlords pay commissions. Landlords pay real estate commissions to their broker and to the tenant's broker, which you obviously would be the tenant. So if we're representing you, we get compensated by the landlord. It doesn't cost you anything for us to save you money. It's kind of an easy process, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so basically, Tom, talk about the significance of this.
Yeah. So as we had mentioned, normally, we'll kind of begin to have this conversation at what we recommend is probably around the 2 year, maybe, 15-month mark, because, at that point, when we begin to have the conversation as to, do you want to stay where you're at and we could renegotiate your current lease? Or would you maybe want to explore to see, what's down the road, who's going to give you free rent to help build out your, allow you to get into your space, grow, as well as give you tenant improvement dollars to help with the build out. But the reason why is we never advise that you kind of wait and let this process drag on is because normally in every single commercial lease that any of our tenants you guys would have signed has something in it that's called a holdover clause, basically saying that if you kind of let your time go by and you're not really thinking about it and you say, I'll get to it, but then at a certain point, you don't renegotiate nor make the decision that you're going to want to move elsewhere. If you fall into that holdover period, that will basically allow the landlord to then, keep you in that space and charge you anywhere from, 1.5, double, or even sometimes triple what you're currently paying for your rent. And that's obviously a situation that nobody wants to find themselves in. And then that's why, no matter where you are with your lease, that's why we try to get this information out there, because you can never have that conversation too early, but you can have it too late. And it could be a couple of years, say, left on the lease. And again, like we said, we're able to find a way to create value for you and still save you money. But that's what you want to avoid, is kind of letting the time go by and then, saying I'll get to it, but then ends up, you could fall into that holdover period. Or if, you say you go to the landlord with a couple months left on your lease, they're obviously going to know that there's not enough time for you to find another space, build out your office, and they're not going to be willing to negotiate on the term and give you something that's favorable to you. So it is very important to, when you have the time, we have this conversation, when there's an appropriate amount of time left on the lease, to then really be able to kind of assess the situation and see exactly how we can help you out.
Actually, Tom said that perfectly. You can't have the conversation too early, but you can have it too late. That's poignant because, again, it doesn't cost you anything. So if we reach out on your behalf, you have 3 years left on your lease and the landlord just says, you know what, I don't care. I'm a landlord. I'm a bully. You're paying too much money. Tough, you know what, and end of conversation. Well, at least we tried. And again, most of them are not doing that, because in that situation, there really is nothing you can do. But what you can do is that's not going to leave a very good taste in your mouth, and it's not going to set up the renewal negotiation that maybe we're going to have in another year and a half. So if that's their response, chances are in about a year and a half, you're probably looking to go to another location. and we can help that happen as well. But again, absolutely nothing to lose to reach out and see what we can do in the process.
Exactly.
So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so as we had kind of touched upon earlier, and kind of the most important part of this is that I'm out here in New Jersey. We're familiar with the markets, and really the most important thing is we touched upon some of the points on those deals is obviously the rental rate that you're paying, free rent, tenant improvement allowances, exclusivity, all things like that. And these are the things that vary, market to market. And, the worst thing that could possibly happen is if, say if you're trying to do it by yourself, and you're going to be negotiating with these landlords, and as, Chuck referred to them as these professional bullies, as, they are, but, you may not be aware of what the rental rate should be, or what, the market, free rent should be, and the times that you'll be in the space without having to pay rent allow you to grow. This is all stuff that you're going to want to know. And that's what we bring to the table when we are doing these negotiations on your behalf. And that's the most important part. And especially now more than ever, it's that, as we touched upon with a lot of these centers, when I'm currently working with somebody from the group now who's opening a practice, and every single, strip center or location that we're going to, it's that, there's a couple vacancies of certain tenants that have gone out, but they say, you're exactly what we want. It would be a great use in the center. And, that's all good and well, but you need to know, that they want you, but really getting you the correct rate that's competitive in the market, and making sure that you have that free rental or the tenant improvement allowance. So there's a lot that goes into it. And, that's why we're here and why we want to get in front of you and tell you all this information, because at the end of the day, we will be providing value, and as we said before, we're not going to be charging you anything for it. So that's why it's so important that, no matter what the situation may be, wherever you are staying, opening another practice, looking for a purchase, all of that is stuff that we've handled. We've done it many times. And, right now is the time to have that conversation. You could really take advantage of it.
And this concept of market knowledge, the best way to explain it is a lot of negotiators, you have a lease, you're paying $6,000 a month. That doesn't sound right to you. It sounds kind of high, but you don't know what it really should be. Okay. So the other negotiator says, okay, we don't want to pay 6, we want to pay 5. Landlord says, okay, we'll meet in the middle, 5,500. You feel good about it because you think you negotiated a better deal, but it's all based on the market. Maybe the market's 4,650. So 55 is a terrible deal. And the same logic applies to free rent and tenant improvements. So knowing what the deal should be is what we bring to the table. And unlike residential real estate or buying an automobile or other investments, there's no website that you can go to find out what a market deal is. We are that website. Our knowledge is how and we will say to you, look, I know the landlord wants this, but here's 3 competing buildings and here's what they're doing. And that's what it's all about. That's how you leverage and position yourself into getting a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let Tom talk about the broker role, and I'll touch on the lawyers because I am a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes lawyers will say they can do this for you, and the lawyer is good to make sure that the legalese in the contract is what it should say to protect you. But I'd be cautious of an attorney who wants to handle your entire renewal because he or she doesn't know the business terms of the transaction. Tom, you can talk a little bit more about what a broker does.
Yeah, exactly. So Chuck had said it there really that, there are times when the lawyers want to, basically say they can help with the renegotiation of your lease. But, that kind of ties into exactly what we had said previously is that, having like somebody like us in your corner, basically going through these negotiations with you is, obviously we're letting you know from our experience and our knowledge on the market where it should be. And it's that, us as brokers and the tools that we have, as well as the relationships that we have in the market, we're fully aware of all of these terms that need to be negotiated and where, you may be working at one space where they're trying to give you this number, but in fact, we know that's just not in line with the market. And as Chuck said, we'll find you 3 competing buildings that are going to give you the same space, but at the correct price. And when it comes down to it, you could have a lawyer that wants to do it, and maybe, if they help with the renegotiation, maybe it's a couple $100 that they don't get for you. But you have to realize that in the long run, a couple $100 on a rental rate over a 10-year lease with a 3% escalation, that's serious money. And when it comes down to it, it's all of those little kind of minuscule details that, could go unnoticed, but that's all that we do. And we are strictly, medical optometry. This is, we've done it thousands of times. So this is where our expertise and the knowledge comes into play extremely, importantly, but, not to say that the lawyers aren't important. And, as Chuck had said, he's a lawyer himself, and we've done work with, Jim Schrager, and I know he works with the group a lot. 100% every deal that we work with, a lawyer does get involved. But, we always advise that it should be the 2 parties kind of working together. And, there shouldn't be a situation where it's just one or the other. We provide that market knowledge. We make sure that everything is correct, in line, and competitive with what should be in the market, especially now because there's so many moving parts. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that there's things changing every day with all the pandemic and what's happening to real estate. And you really need somebody that's like us. We're going through all these deals. We're in the market. We're talking to these landlords. We're talking to these brokers, and we really, know where we have to get you. So
we like to use the term "stay in your lane." So there's experts for every part of the transaction. So let us negotiate the best possible deal, and then let someone like Schrager make sure that the lease document reflects what we said, and that the legal issues like default and assignment and bankruptcy and condemnation, and those things are, there's market terms for leases, just like there's market terms for business terms. So, and that's another thing we do, by the way. We actually will help. Actually, I don't want to jump ahead on the slides, but we will help guide you with the team that you'll need to help you through this whole process. I think we kind of covered this, and I would say, Tom, maybe we amend this with COVID to 24 to 30 months, right? I mean, It's different now. Normally, like I said, we don't want to talk to your landlord 2.5 years before your lease expires, because frankly, he would tell us to pack sand. But I think in this market, got nothing to lose.
Exactly.
He just lost the restaurant, the salon, and the karate studio, and he's worried about losing you because your lease is up in 2.5 years. So if you say, you know what, we get you a really good deal, and you'll sign on for additional 5, 7, or 10, I think he's going to talk to us. Matter of fact, I know he's going to talk to us. And again, if he doesn't, he doesn't. But what do you have to list?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm. Yeah. So this is kind of, to the point that we had just mentioned, why having that conversation at the correct time is so important, because, when we approach the landlord and have that conversation, say that the 2 years, even 2.5, whatever it may be, that still provides you enough time to, if you want to explore the thought of, well, you know what, I've been at my location for a little while now. I may not want to move, but we say, listen, you don't have to, it's whatever you want to do, but let us just show you what's in the market around you, because you may find somewhere that's, in a bit better of a location on the right side of the street. And, that landlord, as we said right now, is everybody's asking for these types of uses that you are. And they're going to be willing to give you a more competitive rate. They're going to give you the free rent. They're going to help with the build out. And it's going to be kind of a situation where you can't even say no. It allows you to go through that process. So you at least have options and kind of make sure that every stone is not left unturned. But, if you approach the landlord at, the 3-month point and say, well, we're thinking about renegotiating and we want to get this rate, or we may move. Well, the simple fact is it's just not going to be possible to move in that amount of time. And then they kind of know that they kind of have you where they want it. And there's really going to be, at that point, you don't have much leverage in that negotiation, and it's going to allow you to, obviously we're going to fight for you, but at the end of the day, when these landlords aren't going to budge, they won't. So that's why, like we had said, a few times, having that conversation earlier, it can't hurt. it could only help. And then even if it's, even if the landlord does say, well, you know what, we can't do it now, at least we create a game plan as to what you want to do. But it's all about creating leverage. And then that's where we come in and kind of help put together that whole entire game plan, no matter what you want to do for it. So,
And I've had tenants say to me, well, don't upset my landlord. He's my friend. And, he's good to me. And I give him a 20% discount on eyewear and everything. And that's not how it works. We're not going to upset him. It's business, and it's all very cordial, but it's just making sure that in fact you're getting the best possible deal. And I assure you, it doesn't upset the landlord. They understand the market. Tom, talk about this a little bit, because this comes up quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So, basically, this is an important part of it, because like we had just touched upon, is that, you could be at your current space and you're thinking that, I don't want to move. I've been here, I don't want to, alter my business or kind of hurt where I've been. But, as I just said, we could basically have that conversation with enough time that's allowed on your lease, where we could basically say, well, you know what, let's see what's out there. We could basically, quickly put together a report of, spaces that are in your market, close enough where, it's not going to really alter, how your business is performing, but basically show you all the valuable options that are out there, that would fit your space, and basically show you, well, this is what's out there. Let us at least reach out to these guys and see kind of what they're offering, and basically put together a picture for you. Well, you may be paying, $30 a foot right now, and there's a nicer center that got built down the road, and, it's right near the intersection, and they're going to give you $26 a foot. Now, like you said, sometimes people feel a little bit uncomfortable. They don't want to, they have a good relationship with the landlord, but like Chuck had said, at the end of the day, it's just business, and what's most important for you is what is the top priority. So we were basically able to, kind of paint that picture to show you exactly what's out there, so that at least, if at the end of the day you want to, renegotiate, stay where you are and renew, at least that you kind of looked at all the options, and that, the right decision was made. And again, this is what, the resources that we have, and we do this every day, we're able to really show you kind of exactly what's out there for you, and resources that others may not have.
So again, this kind of reiterates what we said before, but we know as a broker in the marketplace what the rental rate should be, what's included in the rate, what the tenant improvement contribution should be, what's a market term of lease, how much free rent are you getting, what's the parking situation, what kind of signage do you get with respect to your lease, and it goes on and on and on. These are just kind of the highlights. But again, there's no book, there's no internet website that tells you what these terms should be. And at the end of the day, whatever the market is, obviously we're going to try to get you even better, but at least we have a frame of reference. We know if you're in a $20 market, we're not going to get you a $15 deal, but at least we know it's a $20 market. So we go in and try to get you $17.50, and maybe we end up at $19, but we knew that the floor of the deal was 20. And frankly, not through no fault of your own, you don't know, the lawyers don't know, the accountants don't know. So that's how the process works.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about this, I think.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. So the other good thing about this is, a lot of times what will happen is you're in a space and you just kind of assume that you're just going to keep renewing your lease, and you're going to not only are you going to renew it on the terms that the landlord proposes, but now's the time to say, is this the right amount of space? Going forward, do I want to add a lane? Do I want to add vision therapy, which I don't have now? How long of a lease should I renew for? We've had people say they get a little bit older and they say, well, I just want to go month to month, or I want to go year to year because I want the flexibility to retire. But are you going to try to sell your business? Because if you sell your business without a lease, you effectively have no value to your business. So you have to look at that. And again, that dovetails into number 3. you got to have an assignable lease. Even maybe you are going to retire and hang it up, but you want the option to potentially market your practice and sell it. And a lot of the value, if you've been there for 20, 30, 40 years, a lot of the value is the location. So, you see businesses lost our lease. You see that all the time, right? So we want to make sure that doesn't happen to you. So again, you may not sell the business, you may just retire, but you want a lease, a good lease, and you want an assignable lease. And now it's time to sail off to sea in your 100-foot yacht. Boy, that looks good. And that's social distancing. So again, I think it's kind of nothing to lose. Let us reach out on your behalf. And again, in addition to just the renewal process, if you're an associate and maybe you're thinking now it's time to open your own office, you lease a space, you want to explore purchasing an office, you own a building and a tenant left, you're looking to find a tenant to find a replacement, anything having to do with commercial real estate, that's what we do. And that's where I think we can bring a lot of value to the process. Yes, do we have any questions, Tom? Can we field these? What do we got?
Yes, there is one question. Do you want me to read that, Tom?
Sure.
Okay, so what kind of leverage do you have if you have more than 5 years on the lease?
In general, you really don't, because again, the whole process is if you don't play ball with us, Mr. Landlord, then we can potentially move you. With a 5-year contract, you can't get out of it. You're not going to sublet the space because you're not going to want to sublease to your competitor. You might be willing to commit. The only thing that could potentially work in the COVID environment is if you have 5 years left and this is where you want to be, and we could get a killer deal and you would lock in for, let's say, another 10 years, then we might be able to do something because that would be attractive to a landlord. And it would just depend on the situation. So I would say, again, where we said you got nothing to lose, let us look at the lease and evaluate your market situation and see what we can create. But in general, that does make it tougher. Time, if you have a lot of time, that's not a good thing typically, but I think all bets are off in the pandemic and it's worth reaching out.
Exactly. See, do we have any others? Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you could type them in the Q&A portion.
Okay, and I would say that you can reach us at hprgrealty.com. Sharon knows how to get a hold of us, and Tom, and we're happy offline to talk to any of you. Again, unlike an attorney or an accountant, there's no charge. There's no charge, so we're happy to talk to you. And we're not charging for what we do anyway, so the consultation, we're not going to charge for that either.
Yep, exactly. So it's like we said, we recommend no matter what the situation, no matter what your future plans are, we could kind of talk it through, kind of see what the game plan can be going forward, assess your situation, and just see if, there's a way that we could help out. If not, even just, game planning for the future and how we could help, you better prepare when that time is right. The conversation can never hurt. And like you had said, we don't charge for any of those services. So, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. So, especially now it's, you never know what could happen with everything going on with the pandemic and all the craziness with the real estate. So, might as well try. So
thanks for the time, everyone. And we're happy to help, and we're helping some of your members now.
Yeah.
And just would love to continue the relationship. And when things get normal and you go back to in person, I guess we'll see you at the next event, and hopefully not virtually. Hopefully person to person.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if there are no further questions in the Q&A, which I don't see any more coming in, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation again to Charles Feitel and Thomas Linehan, and thank everyone for attending this evening's webinar. Thanks again to our sponsor, Health Pro Realty Group, for making tonight's webinar possible. That concludes our webinar for this evening. We will be posting the recording of tonight's program. It'll either be on our website or we'll have a something go out on our listserv with the link. So again, thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at NJSOP, skice@njsop.org. And again, thank you for tonight.